Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the show. On this episode, we're going to talk all about transcending the past conditioned thinking that we've all experienced in order to get to that place of pure awareness so that we can take action and not have the resistance that is common when we bring that thinking, when we bring our past conditioned self or conditioned thought into the present moment. So we can take that pure, clean, focused action that will produce incredible results. It's really all about like transcending the mind, getting us to a state of no mind. I'm really excited about today's episode. Before we get into that, I want to remind you that if you like the episode and you find some value in it, please give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with someone who you think might benefit from it. Also, if you have a comment, please leave it in the comment section below. And last but not least, if you want to subscribe to the channel and pick up these podcasts weekly, you can do that on my YouTube channel. So also, before we get into the main podcast, heart of the show, I want to run a couple announcements by you, some of the things that I'm working on, projects that are going to be coming online pretty quick. The first one is the project that I'm really excited about for this spring, and I've mentioned this on some of my social media channels and even maybe the podcast in the weeks prior, but it is essentially the tool called IT. And what that is ultimately a focusing tool and an alignment tool, really, to help you get into harmony and alignment with the things and experiences that you want to have in life. I'm really excited for this tool because it kind of brings into play some of the other projects that I've worked on and that I've created, specifically Just Be It, The Secret to Having What You Want in Life, the book there and the system built around that, the like personal development system built around that. But it goes beyond that, and it actually funnels in all aspects of who you are, what you do, and what you're thinking, what you're being, what you're doing in the world, and all funnels it into a very simple, concise tool and even a checklist that you can start your day with and see how in alignment you are with the things and experiences you want to have that day, and maybe make some micro changes and micro adjustments before you go out the door, before you start the main course of your day. Because ultimately, it's that mindset that we have when we go into the day and everything we bring with us, including what we're wearing, including what we're thinking, how we're showing up in the world. Those are all factors to creating the experience or circumstances that you want to have. So it's really helpful to consider that. So many times we get put ourselves on autopilot, and we get throughout our day and we realize, well, I really wasn't in full alignment with the person I want to be, the things that I want to do and have. And so starting out fresh in the morning with this checklist and this like sheet that you can kind of go through and say, okay, where am I a little out of alignment, a lot out of alignment? Where am I right on? What's working, what isn't? And then you can move forward. Because what you'll probably find, like I find, is that some areas of your life you're in total alignment, some ways. Other ways, very far out of alignment. And that is back to the heart of what we're going to talk about on today's show, just that conditioned thinking. If I've said this before, if you keep on showing up in the world the way you always have, you're going to continue to get the things you've always got. And so the challenge for each of us is to break away from those old patterns of thinking and doing things and bump ourselves back into alignment with the things and experiences we want to have. And really, you can kind of ask yourself, is this area of my life supporting what I ultimately want to have? And if it's not, then you can change it. And that's where, you will begin to cut a new groove in your thinking and your behaving and what you're doing, and then start to be more in alignment. And the ultimate idea is to get as many areas of your life in alignment as you possibly can. And ultimately that will then support those experiences and like facilitate them for happening, right? And so that's the challenge for each of us. That tool is coming online this spring. I'm currently getting it all buttoned up and all of the components put into place there for it. I'm really excited to introduce that. So I've kind of got that on the front burner, even though I've got a couple other things that I want to push out here this spring as well. It's kind of a busy time this spring for me in relationship to my online businesses here and the podcast. But that's one of the most exciting ones that I'm pushing out. I think you're really going to find great value in it because, again, it just reminds you and gives you a physical tool of where you're out of alignment, where you're in alignment. Okay, that's called it. It's coming out this spring. The second thing that I'm really excited for is I'm building an online store currently that it is very close as well, Enhancing the Human Experience store, filled with products and apparel that are designed to help you consciously create and live your best life. Really excited about this one as well. T-shirts, mugs, all sorts of things that are basically reminders to what needs to happen in order to allow you or facilitate your best experiences, your best life. Really, really excited for this. This has been somewhat challenging, I have to admit, because I want the products to be super awesome and super cool, something that I want to wear first and foremost, and something that you'll want to wear as well. I don't just want to put something on a product and like ship it out. I want it to be something that you can integrate nicely into your life, quite frankly, but also will serve as a reminder. That one is coming online before I roll out the other products. That's my main focus right now. It's very, very close. I'll be announcing it on all my social media accounts and on the podcast when it comes out. But I mean, it is the primary focus right now. So I'm really excited for that. Look for that to be coming online very quickly. So let's get into the show today then. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is because, every time I sit down to come up with a concept or an idea to share with you that will hopefully be beneficial to you, that you can use right away, that you can apply today, in fact, to start having better experiences, I kind of, it's challenging for me because I don't want to waste your time. I want to give you something really, really valuable. And the idea for this one I've talked about this in different ways on the podcast before and in different venues. I think early on I did a podcast called A Tale of Two Minds. If you haven't listened to that one, you can go back and listen to that. But it's similar concept. But in today's show, I really want to share the idea and the concept of transcending your thinking mind when you go out into the world, even ultimately 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. Because it's the thinking mind that always is going to offer up the resistance or any type of resistance that you may experience as you push toward your goals and dreams. If there was no resistance in your thinking or your mind, you would move very quickly to that end goal. And one of Wayne Dyer's gurus, Dattatreya Siva Baba, talks about that in something he said. He said that gods and angels manifest instantaneously because their mind is perfectly aligned with divine mind. So just let that sink in a little bit. I find when I think about what he said there, the more I think about it, the more it really resonates with me, and it makes perfect sense. There's no resistance in the gods' minds or angels' minds or any divine being. There's no resistance because they don't have a physical aspect, a physical component to deal with. Now, having said that, that's not a bad thing, right? I mean, we all chose to come here and be in this physical body and do our work in the world of awakening, of becoming the best versions of ourselves, of taking control of our mind, and like I said, awakening to our divinity and playing the game of life. I mean, this is where Swami Vivekananda said, one of my other favorite little gurus said, hey, Earth is the great gymnasium where we come to make ourselves strong. And so we came here for a purpose. We came here to harness the infinite creative power of mind, to wake up to our divinity, to play the game of life, to turn thoughts to things, all those things that are fun and delicious and make life enjoyable. That's why we came here. Now, on the other side of the coin is, if we aren't in control of our mind, if we do let the resistance stop us, if we do let our mind control us and we become a servant to our mind, then life really sucks, doesn't it? However, we all have the ability to take back control of our mind, to take back our thinking and focus. It really all comes down to focus, doesn't it? Wherever we focus our energy, we're putting psychic energy into that seed, that thought seed, whatever it may be. And where you focus is going to expand. And so you want to make sure to focus on things and experiences that you want to have, even if you don't have them yet. This is where the imagination comes into play. We can imagine something very vividly and make it very real, if not super, super real, almost real itself, and bring it into the present moment. That's the watering, or that's the putting that psychic energy on those thought seeds. And the other things that you're not focusing on will diminish. You've probably done this in your own life, either knowingly or unknowingly, and you've realized, hey, some areas of your life are shrinking, whether it be certain things you used to have interest and fascination with are shrinking a little bit, whereas other areas are growing and expanding. That's just putting your focus on certain areas over other areas. And ultimately, that's the game that we're doing here, because that creative power is always flowing through us, and we get to direct where we choose to focus on it. But when we're talking about transcending thought altogether, then we move completely beyond any resistance we're going to have. And most people, you've probably experienced this in your own life. I know that I have at varying points. The practice is to get there all the time, and this is where meditation comes into play. This is where cultivating awareness, peak awareness, comes into play, because ultimately when we transcend that thinking mind and get freedom from what we've known in the past, then we can grow, then we can move toward new goals and dreams. But if we're pushing toward a new goal that is very different from where we've been or something we've done, we're going to have that pull of resistance that is our conditioned thinking and our conditioned ways of being and doing things that wants to pull us back to that state. And that's where that resistance comes into play as we move toward the new goal, the new horizon. And this is ultimately, I think, the constant challenge in life. We're always going to new, we're always growing, we're always expanding. That's the ultimate goal. But it can be somewhat challenging given the nature of the mind, which becomes fixed and attached on our identities from, childhood on up through adulthood, the identity we have of ourselves, who we think we are, who we say we are, right? And ultimately, we're none of those things. Those are all just stories that we're telling ourselves, but the mind attaches to that. And when we transcend the mind and go beyond that, we will remove that resistance from our experience. I sometimes think about life in this way, maybe you've thought about this as well, that if you could erase your mind from the things and experiences that you've had, the things you've done that have impressed upon your consciousness and affected your story, right? They become a part of your story, which ultimately solidifies you in this physical world. If you could erase that part and wake up tomorrow as a new person and implant a new story, a new self-concept, you'd be able to do incredible things, right? Unfortunately, that's not always the case for human beings. We have our story, we have an identity, but we can also design it as we go, right? And build that story or edit the story as we go. It's that story and our identity and our self-concept that can limit us or push us forward. And this is one of the things that, like a daily ritual, daily practice, is to ask yourself, who do I want to be? Who do I need to be in order to realize my goal and dream? And then start building that story and that narrative around yourself. Because if you don't change that, then it's going to be very difficult to take the actions and do those things necessary. If we had no self-concept, if we were strictly driven by the inspiration that comes from beyond ourselves, right? Whether it's our soul, knowledge, higher being, higher self, if we allowed ourselves to be strictly driven by that, that's when life gets super delicious, because everything is going to open up at the right time in the right place. I don't believe we can anyway, know whether something's going to work out for us or something's not going to work out for us if we're using our carnal mind, our race mind, because that mind is limited, isn't it? We have to transcend that mind and go beyond it in order to get to that place, that field of pure awareness and that connection with our higher selves, which is all knowing. That's what I'm kind of getting at in this episode of the show, is that when you get to that place, and I'll talk about some of the ways that I have found beneficial to help get there, and some of the structures to get there. But when you get to that place, then you're always going to take the right action at the right time in the right way. And again, it's transcending the race mind, transcending the carnal mind, because it doesn't know. It doesn't know. This is why the game of life is in many ways an experiment, isn't it? This is where we get into like marketing experiments. You don't know if your product's going to be well received. You don't know if your message is going to be well received. You have to test the water. And the reason you don't know is because it's coming from the race mind. If something came from divine mind, it would always be right for you and for your clients or customers, the people in your life. And it would be like a divine inspiration, which most people have had that experience. A thought coming to them from the other side that is something radically different than they would ever think of themselves, but it turns out to be the exact right thing to do or say or pursue in that moment. And things work out nicely, but it didn't come from their thinking mind. It come from your higher self, from your soul wisdom. But one of the ways, and because I'm a big fan of offering suggestions on how to apply this stuff too. So one of the ways is, meditation can help you transcend the mind, specifically if you practice a type of meditation that is not focused on something that you can identify with in the physical world. This is where transcendental meditation can be very effective because it transcends the thinking mind. It's a vehicle to go beyond the thought and the thought patterns that you're creating all the time and actually get to that field of pure awareness. And there are people who can talk more specifically about this. Some of the scientists that are within the Transcendental Meditation group, David Lynch has an awesome video called, I think it's called Peace, Creativity, and Meditation, or Creativity, Peace, and Meditation. It's an awesome video where he actually traveled the world talking about the profound benefits of meditation, and he knows a lot of the science as well. And there's a piece in that video, a scene in that video where he's actually diagramming what happens when you transcend the thinking mind and go to that place of pure awareness, which is you're ultimately connecting with the boundlessness that we're always attached to, but we don't always know it. So that's one of the ways. But the other way is to just take action and put yourself in situations where your mind doesn't have a chance to think or resist the situation. It has to go with the flow. This is where people who do rock climbing or runners highs or something when you're using your physical body, where your mind has to focus 100% of its attention on the physical activity, and it doesn't have time to resist that activity, right? If you put yourself in situations like that often, the mind will become trained to do that all the time. And then you won't give yourself any time to resist. And that's just putting ourselves outside of our comfort zones more often than not, throwing ourselves into the mix. And then the mind has to quickly do what it doesn't want to do, right? And keep you alive and keep you in the zone and keep you focused. It doesn't have time to offering up any thoughts of, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? You're not good enough. You shouldn't be doing this. This is not how it's done. All those things that the mind will resist. That is ultimately the resistance. It's the fear, doubt, worry, anxiety, and decision that comes from not taking action and from not being in that zone, right? And I just think it comes from taking a lot of action. And I know this is a huge practice for myself, being a person who has a tendency historically to overthink, right? To question all of these things. And as I move into life and realize what works best and what doesn't, and develop these best practices for enhancing my own experience, I definitely have seen where overthinking can shut me down in a big way. And maybe you've experienced this as well in your own life. Overthinking anything just closes everything off. But when we start taking action, even when we don't know what the next step is going to be, even when we don't know the final outcome, but we're ultimately trying to keep that connection with our pure awareness. So the action is more of a vehicle and the end to a means. It's both beneficial to move past our limitations and fears in life, but also beneficial to help us get to that place of pure awareness. Because again, we want to shut down the resistive aspect of mind. That's the ultimate goal. And when we do that, then we can do our work our pure work, which is divinely inspired, right? It's not something that we're, copying subconsciously from someone else or something else, right? We're doing the work that is meant for us in the world. That's our work in the world. When we get to that place, we're divinely inspired and we're able to get a lot done. And there's no resistance, because all of the people who've talked about the mind control methods, Jose Silva talked about this, Stephen Pressfield talks about the resistance within us. Lots of people have talked about this. Even the Transcendental Meditation movement is built upon this notion that we have to transcend that thinking mind. Speaking specifically about Jose Silva's work, he developed the Silva mind control method, which is on my list. I've read his book, but it's on my list to actually go to one of those seminars and learn this process. But his premise there, his theory was that he noticed that it was difficult for people to change when they were consumed by the thinking mind. He had to find ways to help people get into deep, relaxed states and then do that growth and that projection. He talks a lot about visualization and getting to your level, which is a point of where not a lot of thought activity is happening. All of us go through this when we're going from our day into our sleep. There's that transitioning period when we go through the levels of our brain is like getting to that alpha, beta, theta state. I'm not certain of the exact sequence at the moment, but it's going through that process. And there's a point there when our mind is very receptive and open to ideas and suggestions, right? This is like hypnotherapy and hypnotizing people. There's a point there as we're transitioning from awaking to a sleeping state that we're very susceptible to ideas implanted in our brain. And this is where he works right there to help people grow past limitations and their past conditioning. It's all about breaking past our past conditioning so that we can move forward and move beyond. So those are a couple of suggestions that I've discovered on my, in my work of how to transcend that mind. Meditation, deep relaxation, and my favorite at the moment is taking a lot of action and doing things before I feel that I'm ready, doing things that are somewhat uncomfortable, where the mind has to be your counterpart and has to be helping you as opposed to resisting you in order to keep you in that state. And, ideas will just come to you when you're in that state, when the mind is kind of offline, because the thinking mind ultimately, I think we'll have to shed that at some point in the near future. We're becoming overloaded and people aren't able to keep up with the technological advances or the fast pace that the world is living in. And I think that's all by the grand design, is that our race mind, our mortal mind, the mind that is, from this physical existence, this physical plane, will kind of the circuit's going to blow eventually. And that's going to be a good thing, because we ultimately will have to transcend that in order to access higher levels of awareness, higher levels of knowledge. It's going to be a good thing ultimately. But in the meantime, until that happens, we can do our own work to do that, right? Transcend our thinking mind, bring it more offline, and open that channel for pure awareness from the other side, right? From the unseen or our higher selves, and open that channel and cultivate that. And so that the message, our work and our message, can come through that more easily. And it becomes very easy to do our work in the world and not overthink things. At the end of the day, that's the problem with the human experience, is we have this tendency to overthink, and that never gets us anywhere. It only stops us and blocks us from doing our work in the world. So that's the show. I hope that you've derived some level of benefit from that and can, contemplate this over the next week or so and give some thought to this, because I really do think that this is what all of the, Zen masters are talking about. In fact, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm going to pull a quote from Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, Zen Mind. I forget how the exact title, but Shunryu Suzuki, because he talked all about that, right? It's approaching life with this beginner's mind and an open mind, so that you are fully able to engage in whatever's happening. You're fully prepared for whatever's happening. You're not coming in with preconceived notions or a list of things to do, which, I'm totally guilty of that, writing stuff down and making sure I have the steps, right? We ultimately have to shed that. We ultimately have to allow ourselves to be in that 100% state of pure awareness. So I'm going to pull a quote from him. It's been a while since I've read that book, but I know he had a lot of good stuff to say about the topic we're talking about today on the show. All right. Again, if you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who you might feel would benefit, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, all the best, health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.